join me for my show tonight with my guests will be Sarah Harding, Gerard Butler,
Michael McIntyre!
Yes! Heavyweight champion of the world David Haye, and we have music from the Arctic Monkeys. That's Friday night with Jonathan Ross after the news at 10:35.
And it can be worn by both women and men. Excellent. Now tell me more about Lily Allen.
It's my mother. I'm just with my new boss.
What's he like? Is he bold?
What?
Bonjour, mes amis. Comment allez-vous? Je m'appelle Smith A.
Where's he? The baby? Yeah. Oh, it's easier for me to smoke, right?
You must be so bored.
I am, mate. I'm completely bored. I'm a border collie.
Who's Carol Borderland? Then my love to John.
Who's John?
Nettles. Bergerac. Dirty boy. Good job he can't see me like this. You'd have to put him on a leash.
Gavin and Stacey, the new series, starts 26th of November on BBC One. Watch our short and tidy catch-up of Series 1 and 2 at bbc.co.uk/comedy.
Newsnight on BBC Two. BBC News for you. This is BBC One in the East Midlands with the latest BBC News.
The man who said he masterminded the attacks of 9/11 is to stand trial in New York. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, along with other terrorist suspects, will be brought from Guantanamo to face a jury. The trial will be held just streets away from the site of the attacks on the Twin Towers. Prosecutors will push for the maximum penalty.
I fully expect to direct prosecutors to seek the death penalty against each of the alleged 9/11 conspirators.
We'll be hearing the reaction of some of the families of those who died on September the 11th. Also tonight, the woman murdered in front of her children. Her killer is jailed. Her family speak out.
John McFarlane brutally murdered a defenceless young mother. He is, in our eyes, the devil incarnate.
Most of the countries in the Eurozone pull out of the recession. Why is Britain still lagging behind? How the Navy stood by and watched as Somali pirates forced the Chandlers off their boat and then tried to cover it up. And batten down the hatches. Forecasters say the worst storm of the year is about to hit southern Britain.
In the East Midlands, police break in a door searching for the partner of a Leicestershire mum murdered as she arrived at work. And the train company on track for a return to public ownership, but will passengers be pleased?
Good evening. The self-proclaimed mastermind of the September the 11th attacks is to be put on trial in New York, just streets away from the site of the former World Trade Center buildings in which thousands of people died. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who's been held at Guantanamo Bay, will appear before a jury, along with 4 other detainees. President Obama said Mr. Mohammed would be subject to the most exacting demands of justice. Prosecutors will seek the death penalty for all the suspects. Our North America editor, Mark Mardell, reports.
Almost 3,000 people died in the multiple attacks on the 11th of September 2001. They seared America's soul and changed a world. This is where the Twin Towers once stood. New York is still scarred by the attacks, which left many Americans feeling both vulnerable and vengeful. Now, just a few blocks away from Ground Zero, this extraordinary crime is to be tried in an ordinary courtroom in front of a judge and jury. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is accused of masterminding the attacks. This is him after his capture in Pakistan, and how he looks now after 6 years in captivity. He'll face the full rigour of American law.
I fully expect to direct prosecutors to seek the death penalty against each of the alleged 9/11 conspirators.
This is where the 5 are being held now, Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. President Obama has promised to close down the notorious prison. Some of the families of those who died think this is justice at last, not Mr. and Mrs. Santora, whose son was a firefighter, Christopher, He died in the Twin Towers. They say the accused should never step foot in America.
We need to be protected from them. These are very dangerous, I think diabolic individuals. I don't want them near my grandchildren. I don't want them near anybody's children. I don't want them on our soil.
In New York, some worry about the sort of security that will surround such a sensational trial, but many welcome the news.
Better that it's in New York, where he'll get a fair jury of New Yorkers following both the 93 bombing and the 2001 event. I hope he gets a fair trial.
They should be here. They should be in New York, where the event occurred, and allow the citizens of New York to witness firsthand the administration of justice.
This is a very political decision. Before being sent to Guantanamo, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed was waterboarded, some would say tortured, 183 times. Evidence obtained that way could have been allowed before a military tribunal under the Bush administration. This is an exchange between him and a prosecutor.
The information that you're telling us today, so we're clear, you do not believe that you're under any pressure or threat or duress to speak to us today, is that correct?
Yes, let's put it. According to the detainee, quote, I hereby admit and affirm without duress to the following. I was the operational director for Sheikh Osama bin Laden for the organizing, planning, follow-up, and execution of the 9/11 operation.
But President Obama stopped that trial and says this is the right way forward.
Khalid Sheikh Mohammed will be subject to the most exacting demands of justice. The American people will insist on it, and my administration will insist on it.
The president's made sure that Guantanamo's most high-profile inmates do get a normal criminal trial by jury, but the fate of others is less certain, and it's unlikely he'll hit his own self-imposed deadline of closing the prison entirely by next January. Mark Mardell, BBC News, Washington.
Let's speak to Laura Trevelyan, who's at Ground Zero in New York. Laura, we heard a reaction from people in New York there. It seems that opinion is divided on whether these trials should take place there.
Well, that's right. I mean, Ground Zero is the most emotive 16-acre site in the history of New York. And when the trial takes place just a few blocks from here, it'll be emotionally, politically and legally fraught. New Yorkers are divided tonight over having the trial here, just as the relatives of the dead are, and indeed New York's politicians. Mayor Michael Bloomberg has said that it's fitting the suspects we tried here are what is, after all, the scene of the crime. But Rudy Giuliani, mayor during 9/11, has said that the suspects are war criminals and they should be treated as such. So having the trial here seems like a bold yet risky strategy. New Yorkers are asking, what if the unthinkable happens and somehow Khalid Sheikh Mohammed walks free? Would he go down these streets a free man?
Laura Trevelyan at Ground Zero in New York, thank you. A man who stalked a woman and murdered her in front of her children has been given a life sentence. John McFarland admitted killing 38-year-old Mary Griffiths at her home in Bury St Edmunds. Just hours before he broke in, she'd rung police to complain that the 40-year-old was harassing her. An investigation has been launched into the police's handling of the case. Mark Worthington reports.
A loving mother murdered and a family destroyed. Mary Griffiths' killing was a clinical execution by a man she'd once called a friend. John McFarland smashed his way into her home using an axe. As two of her young daughters tried in vain to stop him, he pushed Mary Griffiths down the stairs and onto the street. There, he held her down and murdered her with a bolt gun used when killing cattle. Powerless, her children could only watch.
He is, in our eyes, the devil incarnate. The pain he inflicted on Mary that night and the terror she and her children experienced is what nightmares are made of. We will forever be haunted by the thought of how he made Mary suffer.
It was a friendship that ended in murder. The two met in Suffolk in 2007. They became fitness instructors at local leisure centres and good friends, but McFarland wanted more. The day before she was killed, Mary Griffiths used the internet site Facebook to warn McFarland, "Stop stalking me or I'm calling the police." At 6 p.m. she made a non-emergency call to the police because she was concerned about his behaviour. In the early hours, again on Facebook, McFarland wrote, They say there's nothing worse than a woman scorned. Well, watch this space. Less than 2 hours later, neighbours called 999. They'd been alerted by Mary Griffith's screams. For her murder, McFarlane will serve a minimum of 20 years in prison.
The punishment which was bestowed upon him today was not harsh or severe enough to compensate for the loss of Mary's life.
Tonight, her family are returning to Ireland, still questioning whether more could have been done to save her. The Independent Police Complaints Commission has said Mary Griffith's murder demands answers. It's investigating the speed of the police response. Mark Worthington, BBC News at the Old Bailey.
The UK economy is the largest in Western Europe, still in recession. That's according to the latest official figures. They show that Germany and France saw strong economic growth for the second quarter in a row, and Belgium, Italy and the Netherlands have all now pulled out of recession. But the UK and Spain are lagging behind, as our chief economics correspondent Hugh Pym reports.
There's something to celebrate in this corner of the British economy. But St Pancras International is the gateway to continental Europe, where the Eurostar trains depart, and many of the travellers were heading home to brighter economic news.
Well, in Germany the mood is quite good at the moment. You don't feel the crisis anymore, and a lot of people go shopping, and the cities are full.
Well, I think things are getting better now in France. People have the feeling the crisis is not so rough, so tough.
So who's pulling out of recession? Today's figures for the third quarter showed Germany, which had already started growing, expanding at a faster rate, with Italy not far behind. Belgium came out of recession as well, with France expanding for the second successive quarter. Left behind were the UK, with output still falling, and Spain, the only other leading European economy still in recession. It's worth pointing out that so far our recession has not been as deep as some, including Germany's, but it's certainly been one of the longest, which raises the question, why is the UK lagging behind most of our major competitors?
We do have a larger financial sector than is the case in Europe, and a smaller manufacturing sector. And the crisis has been centred in the financial part of the economy, whereas a lot of European economies, particularly Germany, has benefited from the much stronger growth in Asia and where their manufacturing base exports to.
All this gives ammunition to critics of Gordon Brown's claim back in June.
This Chancellor is leading the rest of the world in taking us out of recession.
We're going to stay here about this height.
But Britain hasn't led the world out, and Lord Mandelson, on a visit to an aerospace business, was having to explain why the economy was still losing height while others were gaining.
The recovery is taking place in Britain as it is elsewhere, but we are at different points in the economic cycle. Other countries went earlier into the recession and are now emerging, and we will follow suit. I'm sure that will be at the end of the year.
Fingers crossed, the government can only hope that growth will resume in the current fourth quarter. Most economists say it will. But for both the UK and the rest of Europe, there's always the risk of the economy stalling or even going into reverse again next year. Hugh Pym, BBC News.
It emerged that an armed Royal Navy vessel stood by and watched while a British couple abducted by Somali pirates were forced off their yacht. Today, the MOD confirmed that a Royal Navy ship was just 50 feet away when Paul and Rachel Chandler were transferred to a pirate ship, but its crew were ordered not to open fire. I'm joined by our security correspondent Frank Gardner. And Frank, one of the many surprising facts about this is that the Royal Navy chose to cover this up until now.
Well, let's break this down actually, Fiona, because did the Royal Navy, were they guilty essentially of abandoning this yacht and the Chandlers to their fate without lifting a finger to do anything about them? No. It turns out that they had a number of armed Navy personnel on board a Royal Fleet auxiliary ship nearby, this one, which looks like a warship, but it's actually a tanker, the Wave Knight. And there were about 20-odd armed Navy people on board that ship. They were very, very close to the pirates, but they had no trained snipers, no marksmen on board. And the decision was taken probably by the captain, possibly under orders, but probably from the captain, not to take the risk to intervene with armed intervention because it could have killed the Chandlers. As it is, they're alive, they're on board, they're on the Somali coastline somewhere. Was there a cover-up? Yes. For some weird reason, the MOD chose to tell us that the Chandler's yacht that we saw earlier there had been recovered empty, the implication being that it was floating around the Indian Ocean abandoned, whereas actually, all along, this ship was right alongside watching it all, which must have been very painful for the crew. And we only know all of this because one of the crew members of this ship, who's chosen to remain anonymous, has leaked the story to a number of British papers, and we're now reporting it.
Frank Gardner, thank you very much. The BBC has seen a leaked British memo advising the Afghan government for the first time to negotiate with senior Taliban leaders. It suggests using a carrot and stick approach to try to weaken and divide the Taliban. But could this controversial approach work? And will the Taliban really want to talk? Here's our security correspondent, Gordon Carrera.
An insurgency that has cost the lives of more than 230 British soldiers. But ending it will take more than just defeating the Taliban on the battlefield. There's a growing belief that it will also require some kind of political settlement. The BBC has obtained parts of a British memo advising the Afghan government to undertake a reconciliation process, reaching out to the Taliban. This memo makes clear that the aim of that process is to weaken and divide the Taliban by showing its men that the option of an honourable exit from the fight exists. This will, it says, require putting in place the right combination of carrot and stick. The stick is military force. The carrot, the memo says, includes offering to take Taliban leaders off the UN sanctions list.
If people who are associated with that insurgency choose to decide that they will renounce violence and that they will adopt the political process and not the violent process, then we are in favour of the Afghans themselves leading a process of reconciliation.
The main Taliban group is led by Mullah Omar. It's established British policy to try and reconcile the foot soldiers and regional commanders. But what's new in this memo is the idea of a political settlement with senior leaders. One former diplomat expelled by President Karzai for negotiating with the Taliban believes that parts of its leadership may be willing to deal.
The debate which has been going on inside the in the British public has been going on inside the United States about how long do we have to keep this up, how long do we have to sacrifice for it. There is a sort of a mirror of the same debate going on inside the Taliban leadership, and progress on reconciliation will happen when the pragmatists get the upper hand inside the Taliban.
Persuading the Taliban to give up the fight will be hard as long as they think they're winning. This website pumps out its propaganda. Its message is that the Taliban need only wait for Western troops to withdraw.
A serious peace negotiation with the Taliban at the high level is not going to come until we have taken the military steps to make sure that they understand they can gain nothing more on the battlefield. And unfortunately, we're a long way from that at the moment.
Military progress will require more troops. Today the Prime Minister said he'd try and persuade NATO allies to commit more. But that won't be easy, especially as everyone waits to see what course the American president will chart. Gordon Carrera, BBC News.
Coming up on tonight's programme, a burden shared, how one community is rallying to support the family of a fallen soldier. President Obama has arrived in Japan with a message that the two countries must find ways to renew their alliance. His visit is part of a 4-country tour, an attempt to re-engage with Asia. It's a region where the US has been the major power since the end of the Second World War, but that position is now threatened by China's rapidly expanding strength and influence. Obama's 9-day tour includes a trade summit in Singapore, followed by a visit to Beijing, and finally, talks in Seoul. From Tokyo, our Asia correspondent Alistair Leithhead has sent this report.
It's Mr. Obama's first trip to Japan as president, and the message he's bringing with a bow is America is back and ready to cozy up again to Asia as China's rising power looms large. Japanese Prime Minister Yukio Hatoyama was also elected promising change, but the change he wants is a more equal relationship with the US, something President Obama was keen to reassure him of.
The United States and Japan are equal partners. Each country brings specific assets and strengths to the relationship, but we proceed based on mutual interest and mutual respect, and that will continue.
America's been behind Japan's rise since the end of World War II, providing it with defence in exchange for a strategic launch pad at the heart of Asia. But that relationship has been strained by a growing resentment over the continuing US presence, and there have even been anti-American protests near a controversial airbase. It's part of a sense US power here is slipping.
I think since the end of the Cold War, there's been some attenuation of U.S. Influence in Asia, in part because of the rise of China and India, but also because the U.S. has been so preoccupied with other parts of the world.
And that's cleared the way for China to expand across Asia, even here in Japan, which it'll soon replace as the world's second biggest economy. Chinese is now the language of travel, with more visitors than ever, flooding in for the sights, the sounds, and the high-end shopping. How much have you and your friends spent, do you think, per person while you've been here?
5,000 to 8,000 US dollars spent on clothes.
That's quite a lot of money.
Yeah.
Tokyo's Yasukuni War Shrine is seen by China as a symbol of Japanese imperial aggression. The new Prime Minister has already promised not to visit, so as not to upset China. And for similar reasons, President Obama didn't meet the Dalai Lama ahead of his trip. It's all about not offending China, whose incredible economic engine is dragging the world out of recession. Asia is where the new world order is emerging fast. It's outgrowing decades of American supremacy here. President Obama's visit is the beginning of a battle to keep the US relevant here on its backyard over the turbulent years of change that lie ahead. Alistair Leithed, BBC News, Tokyo.
The worst storm of the year is about to hit southern Britain. Winds of up to 80 miles an hour are expected, along with torrential rain and serious flooding. Robert Hall is at Portsmouth Harbour for us. Robert, it's looking pretty blustery already.
Yes, it is, Fiona. It's been building up all evening. The latest figures from the Environment Agency say 110 flood warnings in place, most of them concentrated in South Wales, where they affect rivers, and along the south and southwest coast, where coastal flooding is the problem. And let me show you why. There's some pictures we filmed in Looe a little earlier today. They show the height of the tide there. When you get a tide like that, driven by winds up to storm force 11, meeting floodwater coming down the rivers, simply means that floodwater has nowhere to go. So, for example, tonight, Christchurch, just to the east of Bournemouth, that's got a severe flood alert in force, which means that 8 o'clock in the morning when the tide comes in, property and life are at risk. And the Environment Agency has told people to be prepared and take whatever precautions they can. Out there on the channel, a lot of disruption to ferry services. Inland, 2 foot of water on some roads further to the west down in Cornwall. Drivers being told, stay inside if you can. Don't go out tomorrow. If you do, watch out for spray. And whatever you do, don't drive through floodwater. Fiona.
Robert in Portsmouth, thank you very much. Labour says its by-election victory in Glasgow North East has given it a real sense of confidence that it can win at the next general election. Labour held on comfortably to the seat, vacated by the Commons Speaker Michael Martin. It had a majority of 8,000 and increased its share of the vote. But the turnout was just 33%, a record low for a Scottish by-election, as Laura Koonsberg reports.
Introducing the new boy, who's given Labour a reason to smile.
The sun's out. Fantastic.
Willie Bain MP celebrated with an iron brew. But does a win in one of Labour's most traditional territories really give them that much fizz?
Isn't it the case that this result will not make a jot of difference to the UK general election next year?
This is, by any measurement, a historic victory for Labour with 60% of the vote. We fought a good campaign, we fought a really strong, positive campaign.
Their main opponent, the SNP, could only look grimly on as Labour's vote grew beyond expectation.
Last night's result was very disappointing for the SNP. There is absolutely no getting away from that, and I'm not going to try to hide that fact.
No surprise, the Tories trailed in third, just holding off the BNP. Their vote stayed largely unchanged, but the Lib Dems slumped into sixth.
For Gordon Brown, winning one seat here, where his main challenger was the Scottish Nationalists, is very different to fending off opposition in hundreds of seats across the whole of the United Kingdom.
Labour has piled time and money into this campaign, effort that can't be repeated everywhere, and only got out a third of the vote. But those who did cast a ballot kept the faith in a place where Labour goes back generations.
I just feel that they were a working man's party.
you know, we were all working class.
Is there anything that the Labour Party could do, though, to drive you away?
No, I don't think so.
Never? You would always be Labour, whatever they did?
Always.
Perhaps Gordon Brown's reputation would always have been safe here, but only a general election will reveal how many others still have appetite for Labour. Laura Koonsberg, BBC News, Glasgow.
At the end of a week in which the fallen of wars past and present have been remembered, we're taking a look at the impact of the rising death toll in Afghanistan on families and communities back home. 3 months ago, Fusilier Simon Anis was killed in an explosion in Helmand province. The loss and sense of bereavement has been felt not only by his immediate family, but has spread through his hometown near Warrington, where hundreds are coming together in a charity event to honour his memory. Ben Gagan reports.
Simon Anis's family are fighting off their grief, keeping busy, getting ready for tomorrow's fundraising walk. And the offers of help keep pouring in. The whole town, it seems, wants to get behind them.
Oh, it's overwhelming, isn't it, what you know, people are feeling. And
I think that all I'm getting back from the local community is that, yeah, they understand these lads over there fighting, and, you know, they want to be behind them.
Simon was killed as he tried to rescue his section commander, who'd been fatally injured in a Taliban bomb attack in Helmand province. His funeral took place in the local church where he'd got married just 7 months before. He was the first person from the town to die in Afghanistan.
Until Simon's death, what was happening thousands of miles away in Afghanistan had little direct effect on people's daily lives here. But now this community knows it's lost one of its own, and that's brought them face to face with the reality of war.
This is a town with a long history of young men going into the army, and that's perhaps why so many people are getting involved in the walk. The local pub is offering free food and volunteers.
it has brought a lot of the young ones together, and they're all trying to do the best they can, really. And it does bring good out of it, because the community do stick together.
Simon's death has galvanised support for the troops, but it's made people more nervous about the war and more questioning. The man making the T-shirts for the walkers wants it to end soon.
It's just gone too long, this now, and there's can't seem to see an end to what it's all going on about.
It's gone on too long, you think?
Definitely. Far too long, far too long. Just end it, get like this.
Simon's family originally planned for around 100 people to take part in the walk. Now some are predicting 5 times that number, a sign perhaps of the mood in the town.
But now it's looking like it's going to be big, so I'll have to wait and see. But I'll be so grateful to everybody there. I'll go and thank each and every one of them for that.
The Anises have lost a son, the town a local hero. They are all determined to keep his memory alive. Ben Gagan, BBC News, Earlham.
Well, there's more national and international news on the BBC News channel. But now we can join our news teams where you are. Bye-bye.
Hello, with the news now for the East Midlands, I'm Maurice Flynn. Detectives have arrested the partner of a Leicestershire woman who was stabbed to death. Mother of 2, Karen Brooks, was attacked as she arrived at work. She died later from her injuries. Police are tonight questioning her partner, Kevin Sainsbury, as Helen Astor reports.
The murder hunt was launched after Karen was attacked at an industrial estate in Moat Way in Barwell yesterday morning.
Karen had parked on Moat Way, near to where she works, and she was about to get out of her car, we believe, when she was approached by a male who smashed the window of her car and started to attack her, and we know that she died from stab wounds.
Late last night, police closed the main road in Stony Stanton where Karen lived as they sought her attacker. Armed police and police dogs were involved in the operation. This afternoon, police revealed that Karen had been stabbed to death. Her neighbours paid tribute to her.
If I wanted a prescription, drop it in the doctor's, she'd drop it in for me. And just a very friendly person.
I've been here throughout the day. Neighbours have been painting a picture of a happy family life, with Karen and her partner Kevin having barbecues in the summer and more recently celebrating bonfire night. Other people who I've spoken to who didn't want to go on camera have told me that Kevin, who's a builder, was finding it tough getting work in the recession. Helen Astle, East Midlands Today, Leicestershire.
A union says it's prepared to take legal action against a building contractor if the firm doesn't change plans to make 160 workers redundant. The GMB union says the French company Alstom, which is building the new Staithorpe power station in Nottinghamshire, is not following correct procedures, a claim which the firm refutes.
The scheme's been dogged by protests, mainly over the employment of foreign workers on the £600 million construction project. Nonetheless, the power station is being built by both UK-based and foreign workers. Now the French firm Alstom, the main contractor, says it wants to end the contracts of 160 construction workers on the site. But the GMB union says that Alstom has not given a correct 90-day consultation period and claims all UK workers are going, but not Polish construction staff there.
In terms of where Alstom are currently, if they fail to consult meaningfully with the trade unions, then we will take them to court. The total cost to Alstom will be approximately £500,000. That's for failing to consult correctly.
Alstom had told us today that the 160 jobs were always temporary short-term contracts and that the workers knew that when they took the jobs. They say that work here is peaking and that the jobs would come to an end here anyway shortly.
Alstom says if the GMB has concerns, it should contact Alstom's legal representatives. James Roberson, East Midlands Today, Nottinghamshire.
In other news, fire crews are tackling a blaze in a house in the Netherfield area of Nottingham tonight. They were called to Godfrey Street. These pictures have just come in. The roof of one of the houses has collapsed. It's thought it was being renovated. Ambulance staff are on site along with the fire teams, but so far are unable to confirm if anyone has been injured. The town of Grantham may change dramatically over the next decade. South Kesteven District Council wants to build 8,000 new homes, encourage 20,000 people to move there, build a relief road and create nearly 5,000 new jobs. It's been given special status by the government to expand and develop. People in Derby look set to pay £250,000 towards England's World Cup bid for 2018. The money will have to be paid if the city's chosen to host some of the games. Leicester and Nottingham are also in the running to become host cities. But if England is beaten by either Spain, Australia or America in the competition to hold the World Cup, the money will not be repaid. Bring down the fares and crank up the timetable. That's what rail passengers want from the new government company that'll be running trains in part of the East Midlands. The route to London and Scotland, through Grantham and Newark, returns to the public sector from midnight, as Mike O'Sullivan reports.
Passenger Barbara Dempster wants the new public company running some of the rail services from Grantham to cut the fares and cut the confusion over buying tickets, like her £75 day return to London.
It's far cheaper at £74, £75 to get two singles and using two different companies.
And what do you think of that?
That's ludicrous, isn't it?
After British Rail was privatised, London services through Grantham were run by GNER. They failed, and 2 years ago it was handed over to National Express. Now it's going back into government hands and will be run by East Coast. Winning over the trust of passengers could be a long and difficult journey for the new managers.
You've only got to travel on some of those other lines to see how far behind it is, and it's probably 5-6 years behind of investment.
You can't get a meal, or you can't get breakfast, you can't get an evening meal on the way home, which is actually quite important if you're working quite late, and better punctuality.
Ticket prices mainly. As I'm a season ticket holder, and obviously the prices keep going up about 12% every year, so cheaper travel would be best.
East Coast is expected to run the franchise for about 2 years. Mike O'Sullivan, East Midlands Today, Grantham.
Well, staying with commuter news, and more than £10 million is to be spent improving Nottingham Station over the next 5 years. The money will come from East Midlands Trains and Network Rail. And you can have your say about the type of improvements you'd like to see when public consultation starts next month. Final preparations are underway for tomorrow's opening of the Nottingham Contemporary. The £20 million art gallery was delayed by a year and went £4 million over budget. It's expected 200,000 people will look around the gallery in its first year. All of the exhibitions are free, and one of the first features the early work of British artist David Hockney. Now, before we get the weekend's forecast, a reminder of what you can expect on the Politics Show this Sunday. Robin Powell has the details.
Richard Spencer here is quitting dairy farming because of plunging milk prices. And with farmers right across the East Midlands doing the same thing, he's warning the government we could be facing food shortages within 18 months.
Well, for that and more, join Mari Ashby for the Politics Show. That's at midday on Sunday, right here on BBC One. Well, let's take a quick look at the weekend's weather with Des.
Hi, how you doing? Thanks for joining me. And currently we are experiencing some fairly strong winds, gusts of up to around 30 miles an hour, and they could actually increase as we charge into the middle of the night. We've still seen some fairly strong or heavy rainfall as well. And like I said, it's going to continue all the way through the night into Saturday morning. Temperatures tonight are around 10 degrees. Now, once we get into the morning, we could see wind speeds improve and increase up to around 65 miles per hour, but it's going to brighten in the afternoon. Take care.
Well, Newsnight's just getting underway over on BBC Two, and I'm back with your new look lunchtime news, sport and weather at 12:20 tomorrow afternoon. For now, though, from the team, bye-bye.
Good evening. It may not surprise you that there are 22 flood warnings. There's one severe flood warning in Christchurch Harbour, and the story, weather-wise, is about heavy rain and strong winds. And you haven't had the worst of it. And no, nor have I. Heavy rain and gales then. The warnings at the moment are largely for the amount of rain. This is what the radar has picked up. It's come across the southern ground of the southwest England and Wales. The heavier rain now moving through Northern Ireland and Northern England into Scotland. That's what it'll do for the rest of the night. But as that goes north, so the next thing swinging back in, this curl of blue here, is another very tight line of rain. If it's tight, chances are it's squally, and it's with tightening isobars. So as I said, we haven't had the worst. Whatever winds you have now, tomorrow morning they're likely to be even worse. Same sort of direction, and all along the southern counties of England, whilst the steady wind is gale or severe gale, even maybe storm force, the gusts are likely to be even more. Could be up to 18 miles an hour, not over just the sea, occasionally even inland. That will fell a tree and give you a spectacular but dangerous coastal view. The winds themselves are strong through eastern England and Scotland, but as the day progresses there is a slow lightening of the load, and the rain becomes rather less squally too. It doesn't disappear altogether, but it's an improvement, so that by 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when you wonder what's been going on all day, it's about half wind speed through Cornwall and Devon, but still we're near gale force in the middle of England and further east, and that's the back edge of it. That's a squally line that's just about to leave Kent. Now, I've gone for this timing, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, but it may not be accurate. It's the right idea, but it may be an hour or two either way. Coming further up through England and Scotland, the wind is still noticeable, but the sun has been out. I think western Scotland's a bit less likely to be that good, and onshore near Gale, plenty of showers, possibly continuous rain. In Northern Ireland, things are looking a little better, still quite breezy, but again, the sun should be rather more dominant than any showers. And we run back down to Wales to stop. This is 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon, and the worst is over for most places. Not that means it's superb following, however, for the end of the day it's 10 to 13 degrees, the winds come up from a fairly mild direction, and I suspect overnight won't be much worse either. So a stormy Saturday if you want it summed up. Guess what comes next? A better Sunday. Calmer, not calm and not free of showers, but having gone through probably a frost-free night, it's sunshine and a few showers on Sunday. A bit of sunshine will warm things up to, I suppose, 13 or 14 degrees. Good night.
Michael McIntyre and Hollywood heartthrob Gerard Butler spend Friday night with Jonathan Ross, next on BBC One.
Certain moments in time are fixed. This base on Mars, what happens here must always happen.
This is what? It's an unknown infection and it's spreading. Close down all water supplies. Any one of us could already be infected. We've all been drinking the same water.
And if you take that back to Earth, one drop, just one drop.
Water is patient. Water just waits. Waits down the cliff tops, the mountains, the whole of the world. Water always wins. Why won't you help, Doctor? If you know all of this, why can't you change it? Because you die on Mars. You die today.
The beginning of the end. Doctor Who, Sunday at 7 on BBC One.
Ben Affleck is the blind New York lawyer fighting crime as the Daredevil in an hour. First on BBC One and the BBC HD channel. It's Friday, so it must be Jonathan.